Dahlia, ever heard of HSP? I'm one, so you could not ask me for favors and stuff. It makes me sad and hurts me. These were words often repeated by sister-in-law Brielle, my husband's sister. HSP, it turns out, refers to someone highly sensitive to stimuli, easily affected by others' moods, a delicate personality. I, bearer of such a sensitive soul, was told, "For the final farewell, it's family only. So could you, a stranger, please leave? Oh, why don't you guard the parking lot outside? Maybe count the blades of grass during the funeral." On the day of the final goodbye to father-in-law Ezekiel, I was told this under the cold sky. When my kind husband Axel learned of this, he uttered something astonishing. Too late for regrets for those who caused alarm. After all, I had been cared for by these people, in the worst way possible. Amidst the tense atmosphere, one of the attendees said,
"Aren't you guys gonna stop Dahlia outside?"
"Huh?" Me outside was engaged in a rather surprising activity. I'm Dahlia, a 30-year-old office worker. Met Axel through a friend, dated for 3 years, and just married a year ago. Wish I could say it's been a tranquil married life, but not quite. I've been harboring a certain worry since the beginning of the marriage. At the in-laws' house, parents-in-law and Brielle, 2 years older than Axel, live. We often gather at in-laws' house for seasonal events, and naturally, there's a lot to do, like serving coffee when guests arrive. Glancing at mother-in-law Vivian, she seems busy chatting with relatives. It's not exactly painful, but it's not easy using a kitchen in a stranger's house where I don't usually live. Brielle, could you help me out a bit? I'm not quite sure about the kitchen details." I asked Brielle, who had escaped to the kitchen and was sitting on a chair fiddling with her mobile phone. "Dahlia, I've said this many times, but I am an HSP, so please don't ask me for favors. It makes me sad and hurts me." With those words, Brielle stormed off to her room, making a loud noise. I did it again. My relationship with Brielle was always like this, unable to have a proper conversation without supposedly hurting her with my words. After high school, Brielle couldn't hold down a job for long due to her personality, hopping from one job to another. By the way, she quit another job a few months ago and is currently unemployed.
"Dahlia, what happened? There was a loud noise."
The first to rush over in such times is always Axel. Again with Brielle, sorry. I apologized with a wry smile.
"Brielle's just being selfish. I'm really sorry for making you feel bad."
Axel always stood by my side. Then Vivian came from the living room.
"Dahlia again? You know Brielle is sensitive. I always tell you to be careful." "Seriously, for Brielle to get that angry, it must have been something big, right? Don't bully her too much, please."
She glared at me angrily. Whenever Vivian's loud voice was heard, Brielle would come out of her room. "Mom, it's okay. It's my fault. Dahlia asked me to make coffee and told me to take the lead since I'm unemployed, and it just made me feel so frustrated. Dahlia, I'm sorry for making a loud noise earlier." She apologized to me tearfully. To an outsider, I was the complete villain. "I didn't say anything like that. Brielle, why do you always lie? I just asked you to help me with the kitchen details." To my words, "I'm sorry for always misunderstanding. I'm HSP, so please don't raise your voice." She pretended to tremble and act scared, like a tragic heroine. I hated it because it was so infuriating. The relatives made awkward faces and the atmosphere turned terrible. The one who always managed to change the tense mood was father-in-law Ezekiel.
"Dahlia, you tried to make coffee. Thank you. Come on, Vivian and Brielle. Apologize to Dahlia. Brielle, you're an adult now, not a child anymore."
He was the one to firmly reprimand Brielle, his own daughter. Because of that, from the relatives, That's right, Brielle. You're an adult now. Maybe it's time to look for a partner or start job hunting. You can't rely on your parents forever. Learn a bit from your brother Axel. Hearing this, Brielle's face turned red. So, visits to the in-laws' house always left me exhausted. Sitting on the sofa at home, I let out a big sigh, unaware. Seeing me like that, Axel, as always, said,
Dahlia, my family, I'm really sorry. Brielle has always been a pain, can't keep a job. I tell them not to coddle her, but Mom is like that, you know? It's a headache for me too. We don't have to go to my parents' house anymore.
Axel offered, but being a newlywed, if I'm the only one not going, Axel might be criticized. Hesitating to accept his suggestion, I thought about it. After all, those gatherings were only once a month, if at all, and I just needed to endure for a few hours. Besides, I thought I understood a bit about this HSP character trait Brielle talked about. I have a best friend named Maya. We were high school classmates and moved from Dallas to Boston together. Of course, I asked her to give a speech at my wedding. Maya, too, has a fiancé she's been with for a long time, about to get married. He's serious, responsible, and kind. We're both busy with work and haven't seen each other recently, but she's my precious friend. I didn't know much about HSP until Brielle mentioned it, but the more I looked into it, it's just like Maya, I thought. I wasn't sure if I could act as Brielle wanted, but I tried to understand her personality. Amid these days, my husband and I were called to the in-laws' house. Ezekiel wasn't there, only Vivian and Brielle. Vivian opened her mouth and blurted out something unbelievable to me.
Dahlia, can you stop it already?
Filled with question marks, I replied. And what is that? Vivian, face red with anger, said.
Don't play dumb, Dahlia. You've been sending harassing messages to Brielle almost daily. She's scared. Poor thing.
What? I was baffled, having no clue about such accusations. Then Axel intervened.
So where's the proof? If you're going that far, show us those messages, Brielle.
With Axel's words, Brielle shivered a little. I was too scared and deleted them, but I'm not lying. Thinking that there are people like Dahlia in the world makes me too scared to even think about getting a job. I was infuriated by her weak, crying figure despite being an adult.
Brielle had a hard time at work and quit her previous job, right? She started feeling better recently, so I suggested she start looking for a job again. Then she cried and said all that yesterday. I felt so sorry for her.
No way. That's just too far-fetched. And Vivian believing that? They're both ridiculous. Disgusted, I looked at the two of them.
So that's all you called us for? Consider our position being dragged into such a stupid conversation? Brielle, what's with you always using HSP as an excuse? You've been to a hospital or something for it, right?
Axel glared at Brielle. Huh? Of course. I'm taking medication and it's really hard for me. I can't work in this state. Brielle yelled, slamming the table with a loud noise, Vivian echoing her.
Yes, Axel, you're being deceived by Dahlia. Brielle is suffering so much. Why aren't you on her side? You're crazy.
Axel looked at them as if they were filth.
What are you talking about? You two are the ones who are crazy.
Then Axel retorted, Brielle, please stop using me as an excuse for not wanting to work. It's extremely unpleasant. Brielle's face turned red at my words. For the next few months, for the first time, I experienced what seemed like a peaceful married life. I learned how important it is to distance oneself from the source of the stress. It was a cold early morning when it happened unexpectedly. At 4 a.m., Axel's mobile phone rang, rubbing his sleepy eyes.
Ugh, it's Mom. Obviously, I can ignore it, right?
As Axel was about to go back to sleep, I said, Calling this early in the morning is a bit strange, don't you think? Maybe something's happened. Reluctantly answering the call he heard,
Axel, Ezekiel has...
it was a heart attack. By the time we rushed to the hospital, Ezekiel was already gone. Vivian, seeing me,
Why did Dahlia come too? Go away!
she threw her bag at me. Brielle was also there.
It's all Dahlia's fault. All of it. Non-family members leave.
I said to their irrational words,
Enough! Can't you be quiet at a time like this? It's so unfair to Ezekiel. And don't worry, I don't consider you family either.
Axel apologized to me, but there was so much to do. Ignoring the unreliable two, we busied ourselves with death notices, funeral and church arrangements. Ezekiel's sister, auntie-in-law Lucy, who lived far away, "He worked so hard. Rest well, Ezekiel." "So, what will you do, Axel?" Axel looking straight ahead. "My mind's been made up for a long time." Lucy simply nodded in understanding. We decided to have a funeral with only close family. On the day of the funeral, I never expected to be treated like that. While I was bustling around,
Dahlia, can you come here?
Vivian and Brielle called me over. "What is it?" I asked. They had a request.
"We asked Axel, but he refused. Can you ask him for us?"
I was shocked when I heard what they wanted.
"Now that Ezekiel's gone, you both work, right? Could you help us out financially? Maybe $1,500 a month would be good. We're family after all, right?"
They were completely ridiculous. I couldn't help but laugh, holding my stomach.
"Family? Huh? Please don't make me laugh.
Weren't you the ones who said non-family members should leave? Always calling us outsiders and now saying we're family when you're in trouble? Isn't that too self-centered? I refuse, of course. You're both young. Please work." Laughing derisively at me, Brielle, using her large frame, forcefully pushed my shoulder and said, "Fine, then we want a family-only farewell. So could you, an outsider, please leave? Go guard the parking lot outside. And while you're at it, count the blades of grass during the funeral." Pulling my arm and laughing as it was amusing, she kicked me out of the funeral home without even giving me a coat in the cold season. "Brielle, doesn't it hurt your heart to do such a petty thing? Don't you realize that your whims hurt people?" My words seemed to have no effect. "What? Preaching to me, a younger person? Heart hurting? I've never felt that."
Rather, I get irritated watching people who don't do as I want. Dahlia, your happy work-life boasting is annoying.
As she glared at me, I replied, "I see. Well, that's enough. I wish you both the best in difficult times ahead." Smiling kindly, I walked towards the parking lot. I heard their crude laughter behind me, but it didn't bother me anymore. About 20 minutes later, a pale-faced Vivian and Brielle, along with an enraged Axel, showed up in the parking lot where I was.
"Dahlia, what are you doing? Are you crazy?"
Their faces, losing their minds, were comically absurd, and I couldn't help but laugh. "What am I doing? Just doing as I was told, guarding the parking lot and counting grass blades. I'm at 350 now." Behind me, "As I'm an outsider, I'm not allowed in the funeral home. I've been told by Vivian and Brielle to guard the parking lot and count the blades of grass." I had written these words on a cardboard box and placed it nearby. "Why are you out here in the cold doing this?" the relative asked worriedly, but I silently pointed at the cardboard box. Axel brought me my coat.
"I couldn't believe you were actually doing this. This is the last time. I'm really sorry for all the trouble I've caused."
To the tearful Axel, "It's okay," I said. Axel always stood by me. When I returned to the funeral home, several relatives rushed over. Don't worry about this and go to your mother's side with peace of mind. Why would I? I looked puzzled, and Axel quickly nodded behind me. I later learned that when Axel noticed I was missing,
Where's Dahlia?
he asked Vivian and the others, who replied with a nasty laugh.
Dahlia said she's an outsider and wouldn't attend the funeral, so she went outside.
She's guarding the parking lot since she has nothing better to do. She's terrible, right? Maybe you should break up with her. Then you can come back home, Axel, and give Mom some peace. Who would believe such a lie? Axel, outraged, declared.
Comfort you? Are you kidding me? I've said it before, my family is Dahlia and Dahlia alone. I don't want anything to do with people who only hurt her. I'm cutting ties with you.
At the mention of cutting ties, Vivian was agitated.
Cutting ties? Such unfilial behavior. At least support us financially. You expect us to live in that house, just the two of us? Show some filial piety.
In response to Vivian's furious words,
Why do you even think you can continue living in that house? It's too presumptuous. It's embarrassing, right, Lucy?
Lucy nodded to Axel's comment. The in-laws' house was originally built by step-grandparents. When the step-grandparents passed away, the property and the house were inherited by Lucy after a discussion among siblings. Vivian, you didn't help Dad and Mom when they were in trouble, did you? Instead, you drove them out of their own home. I've always apologized on behalf of Ezekiel, and I inherited the house. There's no plan for me to return. Brielle, you too. You've always bullied my daughter every time you saw her. She's so afraid of you that she didn't even come today. Lucy glared at the two.
Dad was planning to divorce Mom and leave the house. You didn't know that, did you? He consulted me many times, saying he was scared of you two and didn't know what to do. Lucy and I were preparing to sell the house.
Axel spoke calmly.
Divorce? Selling the house? Axel, what are you talking about?
The fear of possibly losing their home seemed to instantly drain the color from their faces.
Brielle, you need to straighten out your childlike behavior, or you're going to face serious consequences soon.
Axel's advice was unheeded.
Shut up! I'm not wrong. Selling the house, what are you thinking? That's it. I'll move into your place. Take care of me and Mom.
Ignoring their childlike comments, Axel said,
You need to leave the house by the end of the month. We've got a potential buyer. And don't think of depending on us. Dahlia's mother has been diagnosed with an illness. We're moving to Dahlia's hometown.
Axel's words were met with loud complaints from the two. Amidst the tense atmosphere, a relative who entered the funeral home said, Aren't you going to stop Dahlia outside? What followed was as earlier. Neither of the two, already disliked by the relatives, had anyone on their side and seemed diminished. Brielle, I've always thought this, but HSP? That's a lie, isn't it? Brielle glared at me.
No, I'm taking medication and...
Then what's the name of the medication? Which hospital? I pressed her.
That is,
Brielle fell silent. HSP is an innate personality trait, and there's no medication for it. My best friend is like that. She's been suffering in silence, pushing herself too hard. She's serious and tends to bear it all alone. But you're different. You're not HSP. You're just running away from unpleasant things, ignoring others' feelings, and throwing tantrums like a child whenever something doesn't go your way. What you did to Maya, I will never forgive you for that. Months ago, I met my best friend Maya after a long time. She was even thinner than her already slender frame and told me she was visiting a psychiatrist now. The cause was stress at work. A new employee, upon realizing Maya was younger, behaved over-familiarly from the first day, pushing work onto her.
It's faster when someone experienced does it, right? Thanks a bunch.
Maya ended up with constant overtime. Eventually, this document is due tomorrow, right? It needs to be submitted today. This and this are incorrect. The new employee slammed the desk and announced,
I'm going home, and I quit today. I can't work in a place where seniors bully newcomers.
She left all her work and really went home. Maya, feeling responsible, soon took a leave from the company. Her engagement ended due to misunderstandings with her fiancé.
Was it my fault? I was scared and didn't know what to say.
I comforted Maya as she cried silently. Just hearing her story made me despise that person. Just hearing about it makes me hate that person. Why not sue? It's unfair that only we suffer. Do you have any evidence? Maya had recorded their conversations to review them later, suspecting her own communication might have been faulty. I was infuriated by the arrogant attitude, but more than that. Wait, this person? Their name, is it Brielle? I felt dizzy when I found out that the unreasonable person was Brielle. Upon learning this,
I can't sue someone from Dahlia's family,
Maya said. Don't worry, we're practically strangers now. I'll fight with you. My cheerful laughter brought a slight smile to Maya's face. So, expect a letter from a lawyer about the compensation claim soon. Make sure you pay up. I smiled kindly and Brielle's face went pale. The funeral proceeded solemnly, and I was able to say my final goodbye to Ezekiel. Vivian was too distraught to give the eulogy, so Axel did it instead. There were sniffles around the room as he spoke of his father. We moved to Dallas. Mom's health is improving. Vivian and Brielle, kicked out of their house, managed to rent a cheap apartment. With little cash left and now the compensation to Maya, their life is tough. Vivian started a part-time job.
Brielle, you quit your job again? Be responsible.
Shut up, I'm not wrong. A parent should support their child.
Once closed, they now constantly argue, and it seems they might be evicted from the apartment. I've issued a restraining order against them and instructed Mom to call the police without hesitation if they show up at our place. Maya quit her job and returned to Dallas with us. She's still recovering, but gradually gaining weight, and her smile is coming back. Nothing makes me happier. Someday when I have children, I want to teach them the importance of empathy and that there's no need to endure and be friends with someone they can't understand.
I'm sorry, I heard my husband was brought in. As I ran into the treatment room, the eyes of the doctors, nurses, and my husband were all on me. I wondered at the momentary silence, but when my eyes met my husband's, I was assured that he was safe and that his life was not in danger for the time being. But the next moment was outrageous. My name is Tanya. I'm a 30-year-old nurse. My husband, Steve, is 2 years older than me and a government employee. Unlike my previous boyfriends, I was attracted to him because of his seriousness. I don't know if it's because of my profession as a nurse or my nature, but I don't have a hard time serving others, and I am happy when people depend on me. Hence, helping out my boyfriend, lending him money, and such things were a daily occurrence. Even though I knew in my head that I shouldn't do it, I would do it when I was asked to. Many of my fellow nurses are like that, and relationships are always a topic of our conversations. But then, a turning point came for me. I met my husband at a blind date with fellow nurses. He seemed quiet and serious. He was the type of guy I had never been around before, and I was attracted to him from the start. Other girls said he looked too serious or plain, and there were no rivals. We exchanged contact information after a strong push from me. I was also the one who asked him to go out with me. The relationship lasted 3 years. It's been a smooth relationship, with no conflict or betrayals. Many relationships break up after a few months, and it would have been better if the relationship had lasted a year, but with Steve, it had lasted 3 years. I said to him, "Well, things are going to continue to go well. Shall we get married?" He proposed to me, and we got married. My husband had little dating experience, and his hobbies were reading and playing games at home. He was someone who rarely went out, but he was a bookworm and never ran out of topics to talk about. He's not a fan of the outdoors, but he seems to have a lot of gaming buddies, and we often play games while talking online. He says that since he started dating me, he has had more opportunities to go out. He was interested in it just because he didn't have anyone to go to, and he enjoys it wherever we go. My in-laws are a bit far away, about a 2-hour drive. I have the impression that my in-laws are gentle people. But Steve is the youngest of 3 siblings, and his in-laws are quite elderly, so we don't get to see them often. After meeting them at the wedding and the wedding ceremony, we only went to greet them once, at New Year's. We exchanged mid-year and year-end gifts, and I do call them, but I work nights, so our hours don't match, and I don't get a chance to talk to them very often. My husband and I go out somewhere when our days off coincide, and we do our share of the household chores. I thought we were doing well. However, it was about 3 months ago that I sensed something was wrong with my husband. When I came home after work, he was asleep on the sofa. A beer can was lying on the table. "You'll catch a cold," I said to him. He looked at me sleepily, rubbing his eyes. "Isn't it unusual for you to be sleeping here and drinking beer?" I asked. "I was at an online drinking party with my gaming buddies. I was having too much fun and drank too much. I don't understand this world, but as long as my husband was having fun, I thought it was fine. But this was a mistake." After that, similar incidents continued, and one day when I saw my husband, I noticed that his hair had changed. "What's wrong with your hair?" He had never dyed his hair before, but now it was all done up and brown. "Is this hair okay at your job?" My husband is a government employee, and I thought he told me that the regulations are very strict. "What was wrong with it? I just thought recently that I should enjoy dressing up while I'm young. What do you think? Does it look good on me?" My husband was not a sophisticated man for his age, but he had suddenly changed, hadn't he? I'm not sure if it looks good on him or not, maybe because I'm not used to seeing it. But it doesn't look good on him. I didn't say it looked good on him. "Oh, I see," I simply replied. A few days later, he got his ears pierced. Again, I didn't think this looked good on him. Was he having a midlife crisis? I thought about that, but maybe he's having trouble with his job or something. "Hey, what's going on with you lately?" Unable to remain silent, I asked him straightforwardly, but he didn't give me a clear answer. "Nothing." And then my husband went to the bedroom. I knew I could not go on like this, but there was no one to fill in for the nurse who had retired not long ago, and I was so busy that I could no longer afford to pay attention to my husband. Around the time this was going on, Steve said, "My dad's not feeling well lately, so I'm going home for the weekend to check on him for a while." My father-in-law is old, and my husband must be worried about him. I nodded my head in agreement, and my husband began to leave the house every weekend. I tried to be considerate in my own way by cooking for him and texting him during work hours, but he rarely responded. Just when I thought it was time to have a proper discussion with him, I received an unbelievable call while I was at work. "Tanya, the police are trying to contact you." A colleague of mine called and passed the phone to me. "The police? Why?" I picked up the phone, feeling uneasy. He told me that Steve had been in an accident and had to be taken to the emergency room. "What? What about my husband? Is he okay?" I was so upset that I questioned the police officer on the phone. He told me that he had heard it was not life-threatening and that he had been taken to our hospital where I worked. I rushed to the emergency ward. I asked the ward nurse where to find him and hurried to the treatment room. When I opened the door, I was met with the stares of the people there. "Excuse me, I heard my husband was brought in." The doctor looked doubtful, and the nurse's eyes swam. I felt uncomfortable, but when my eyes met my husband's, I was relieved. The nurse explained briefly. They said he had a leg injury that was so severe that they were going to cut his pants in order to treat him. When I looked at my husband again, his pants had already been cut off. Then my husband, noticing my gaze, shouted, "Tanya, don't look at me!" What? I'm a nurse, and I wonder if my husband thinks it's embarrassing for me to see him have his pants cut off? Certainly that may be the case, but it's common sense to cut off clothing when you can't remove it normally due to injury. "Just get out of here!" my husband shouted. I stood there, not understanding what was going on. Even though my husband screamed, the hands of the doctors and nurses did not stop rushing to treat him. It was only natural. If I listened to every word they said, It might take too much time and stall the procedure. Suddenly, something extraordinary grabs my attention. "What is that?" I muttered to myself. On the inside of my husband's thigh was a tattoo. The injury being treated was on his left leg, while the tattoo was on his right leg. Fortunately, the right leg did not appear to be damaged, and the eye was drawn to the leg that had been injured. Scrawled onto the inside of my husband's thigh is someone's name. It seems to be a woman's name. Yasmin. Who? My husband continued to be shocked by my words, but I got out of there once the procedure continued. I talked to a fellow nurse in the emergency ward who told me that apparently my husband had not been brought in alone. She said she thought it was a couple who was married or dating because he was brought in with a woman his own age who had been in the accident with him. When he checked the name of the woman who was transported with him, her first name is Yasmin. It matches the name on the tattoo. Does this mean they were having an affair? I kept asking myself. My coworker said she had brown hair and pierced ears and also had a tattoo with his name on it. It didn't add up. I asked the nurse who treated the woman, and she told me that my husband's name was also tattooed on her inner thigh. I think it's safe to say they are having an affair. But what kind of a nerve does a woman have to have the name of her cheating partner tattooed on her body? I can only think that she must be unstable. As I was thinking this, I remembered the call from the police. The police first called my mother and father-in-law's house, but my in-laws cannot drive, so they asked where I worked and called me. This means that my in-laws must be worried. So I called their house, and my father-in-law answered, "Is Steve gonna be all right?" He was worried, so I told him that Steve had been in an accident and had been taken to the hospital, but was not in life-threatening condition. My father-in-law's voice told me he was clearly relieved. So I asked him, "By the way, Dad, have you been feeling better?" My father-in-law said he had no idea what I was talking about. I clarified, "Because Steve said you were not feeling well and he's been gone every weekend. He said he was taking care of you." I had no idea. It was all a lie. I was relieved to hear that my father-in-law was in good health and that there was nothing wrong with him during his recent medical checkup, but the problem was, where was my husband going? If it wasn't to my in-laws' house, then it must have been to the place where he was having the affair. But I had no proof. After finishing my working hours, I went home without seeing my husband, who was admitted overnight for treatment. I went home and began to go through my husband's belongings, thoroughly examining them. The evidence was easy to find. I found photos of him with this woman, hotel receipts, and even an email confirmation for reservations to a romantic resort. According to the schedule, they must have had this accident on the way home from the resort. The accident was a car crash on a mountain road. No one else was injured, and neither Steve nor this Yasmin woman appeared to be in life-threatening condition. However, since Steve had injured his leg, and it might be difficult for him to walk properly for a while, normally I should be worried about him as a wife, but I don't have that feeling anymore. I couldn't believe he lied about visiting his parents, saying he was worried about them, much less was lying to cover up an affair with another woman. I wondered if Steve's recent strange behavior, such as dyeing his hair and getting his ears pierced, was due to the influence of this woman. I told a fellow nurse and asked her to refer me to a lawyer who was good at divorce matters. The next day, I headed to the hospital room with my husband's belongings. My husband seemed to have hit his head and was so confused that he could not remember what had happened in the treatment room yesterday. Honestly, I didn't even care about the truth anymore. I left the hospital room without even having a conversation with him because I had a shift to get to. When I finished work, I went to see my lawyer and told him what happened. He told me that with that much evidence, I would have enough to sue. I just wanted to get a divorce as soon as possible. I couldn't have that man come out of the hospital and live in the same space. I felt so betrayed by my husband that my anger outweighed my sadness. From there, I found a new place to live and moved out on my own. Only my husband's belongings remain in the house. I planned to be patient until the day my husband was discharged from the hospital. I thought about divorcing him while he was in the hospital, but he is in the hospital where I work, so it would be troublesome if something happened to him there. Then, we could get a divorce when he gets out of the hospital. I drove to pick my husband up from the hospital. I have to make a quick stop. Please come with me." He looked at me strangely, but nodded. I headed for a family restaurant near our house. When I entered the restaurant with my husband, the lawyer was waiting for us. My husband looked at me as if he didn't understand what was going on, but I guess he was tired of standing on a leg that was not fully healed yet. He sat down quietly, and I thrust the divorce papers at him. "Divorce? Why?" my husband shouted in a crazy voice. I seethed in my anger silently for a moment. "What do you mean, why? You had an affair. You even had your accident on your romantic trip. The evidence of your affair was found in our own home. What do you think you're doing? Besides, you lied about your father not feeling well. You lied about going to your parents' house to see this woman." My husband's face turned pale. "You think I am naive? Yasmin, the woman you were having an affair with, is out of the hospital. I heard that her injuries were less severe than yours. I can't believe she was brought to the hospital where I work." I smiled wryly, and my husband's face turned even paler. "You will pay for the anguish you've caused me." I handed him the divorce papers and a pen. My husband did not take the pen. "Is it only your leg that's injured, or have you lost the use of your hand as well?" I sarcastically said to him, and he finally picked up the pen. But he wouldn't sign. He only stared at the paper. "Why don't you sign it? Are you scared at the idea of starting over? You think this was just some game?" My husband froze, as if I had hit the nail on the head. I gave him a cold stare. "You're kidding, right? I can't be with my husband with the cheater's name tattooed right on his body." He looked at me in surprise. What? What are you talking about?" He may have been trying to deceive me, but I was unmoved. "You really don't remember? I was there when you were rushed to the emergency room. You were yelling at me not to look." Then my husband's face changed color. "Sound familiar? I saw the tattoo on the inside of your thigh, too. But what kind of a man tattoos his mistress's name on his body? Even if we didn't get divorced, do you think you can hide it from me?" My husband was slack-jawed. "No, it's not. That's not it," he said. I could only sigh at the sight of my husband. Dyed hair, pierced ears, and tattoos, and with the name of the person you cheated on your wife with? At least do it after you get divorced. While Steve was in the hospital, I actually met Yasmin face to face. I didn't go out of my way to see her or anything. We just bumped into one another. She was lost in the hospital, looking for the gift shop, and she asked me for directions. "The gift shop is just around the corner. Oh, and you're Yasmin, right?" "My husband is Steve," I said, as she checked my nameplate, turned pale, and left at a speed that was hard to believe for an injured person. "Please don't run in the hospital," I called after her. I think she was more embarrassed than I was. She probably heard from Steve that I worked here, but she probably never thought she would run into me at such a big hospital. Quite the stroke of luck. Seeing how my husband said he would rather start over with me than with someone he was supposedly loved enough to get a tattoo, I asked my Steve if he had been dumped by Yasmin. Steve didn't think I would ever find out, and apparently would rather suffer and stay married to me rather than have me file for alimony. I can't believe he thought he wouldn't get caught with her name tattooed on his body, and breaking up with him wouldn't erase the fact that he cheated on her, though. Nurses have a high rate of attracting the wrong kind of men. I'd been the same way, but when I married Steve, I thought he was a serious man and that he wouldn't betray me. And then he was stupid enough to get a tattoo of the person he cheated on me with, which is the worst thing ever. I'm so blind. I'll leave the rest to the attorneys, and I hope I never see him again." The lawyer looked at me and nodded. "I've moved out, so you'll have to get a cab or whatever to get home on your own. Bye." My husband looked at me with a pitiful face, his mouth agape. He would probably be crippled until his leg wound healed, but he deserved it. After that, I was divorced without incident. I also got alimony. Thanks to that, Steve was left broke and bankrupt. To his surprise, he found out that Yasmin was married to a colleague from his office, and they had actually found out by chance that he and her husband were online game buddies. Of course, Yasmin's husband filed a claim for alimony against her as well. I heard that Steve had to quit his job and the rumors just keep on spreading. But I got the alimony paid, and I don't care if Steve quits his job or not. After the divorce was finalized, my former in-laws contacted me, but they were furious when I politely explained the situation. They apologized to me and said they would never let Steve hurt me again. This time, the word spread among my fellow nurses, but they all laughed it off, and I am still laughing my way through it. Now, I live alone, and I'm free to do whatever I want.
Listen up. I'm giving your $3 million family home to my parents, all right? John taunted, dangling the keys to my childhood home. Hold on. Where did you get those? Borrowed them from your key case. No big deal, right? I couldn't contain my anger watching John dodge my attempt to snatch the keys back, flashing that smug grin. No way, that's not... Enough, Nancy. The daughter-in-law is supposed to give her assets to her husband and his parents. Richard, my pompous father-in-law, interrupted me. Catherine, my mother-in-law, joined in. Absolutely, Nancy. Give it up already. John and my in-laws were eyeing my family home, filled with precious memories of my late dad. This is just too disrespectful. I clenched my teeth, trembling with rage. I'll teach them a lesson, I swear. 5 days later, John and my in-laws, who had moved into their family home, would face a shocking truth. My name is Nancy. I've been married to John for 20 years. We live with our son Brian, who just started college this spring. I have a fulfilling job, and life has been good, except for one issue. One afternoon, the home phone rang. It was Catherine. Hello, Catherine. What's going on? Hi, Nancy. We received the birthday flowers, but... Great, they got there safely. Sending just flowers. That's really not enough, you know. Even Richard says you're being thoughtless. What? How about a brand name bag next time? Just send an extra gift card for now. Make it $200. I can't believe... Do it within 3 days. Bye. She hung up. My in-laws live 2 hours away and have been demanding money, which is really troubling. Hey, John, Catherine wants a gift card. Says the flowers aren't enough. Just send it, Nancy. Be considerate. John mumbled, glued to his mobile phone. He's been away a lot recently and hardly talks even when he's home. He defends his parents but never stands up for me. Just then, Brian spoke up. Mom, let's get the gift card when we visit Grandpa. I'll go with you. Thank you, Brian. My 18-year-old son is sometimes rebellious, but has grown into a sincere and kind young man. That's my saving grace. Brian and I went to visit my dad, who is battling cancer and has been in the hospital for quite some time. Originally, my dad took over my grandfather's business and worked hard all his life. When I was in middle school, my mom passed away. Since then, my dad raised me as a single father, never remarrying. For me, my dad was someone I couldn't thank enough. He always adored Brian since he was little, and Brian loved Grandpa too. Ah, Nancy, Brian, you're here. Dad, how are you feeling? As usual. Brian, how's college going? Grandpa, I'm studying hard. I talked a bit with my frail-looking dad, who seemed to be in discomfort. When Brian left the table for the restroom, Dad spoke to me. Nancy, I don't think I have much time left. I've decided to let a subordinate take over the business. But the house? I understand, Dad. Don't worry. Just focus on yourself. Hearing my words, Dad smiled, as if relieved. I knew time with Dad was running out. My heart ached, and I had to fight back tears. See you, Grandpa. I'll come again. Dad, call me immediately if anything happens.
All right, see you.
That turned out to be our last conversation. 3 days later, Dad's condition worsened, and he passed away. I was devastated, and Brian comforted me, tears streaming down his face. But there were things I had to do. Being Dad's only child, I had to organize the funeral. The funeral was held at our family home. As a beloved businessman, many came to mourn Dad, keeping me busy. In the midst of it all, John was playing on his phone, doing nothing. I was already resigned to his lack of attentiveness. Still, thanks to Brian and other relatives, we managed to get through the funeral. After sending off the mourners and about to start cleaning, my parents-in-law came rushing over to me. "Ah, Richard, Catherine, thank you for today." Well, I thanked them. Catherine said while looking around, "Well, it's fine, but Nancy, I haven't been here since the family meeting, and your home is still so luxurious." Indeed, our family home is impressively opulent, standing in a prime location with 10 bedrooms, a pool room, and a sports court. Before I stepped into the real world, I didn't realize how extravagant it appeared to others. Since inheriting it from my grandfather, Dad has always taken great care of it.
I heard from John. Is it really worth $3 million?
Caught off guard by Richard's excited tone, I dodged the question. "Who knows?" "Do you have any siblings, Nancy?" "Yeah, I don't. Why?" Hearing that, my parents-in-law and John seemed delighted and left. I felt uneasy, but had to quickly return to my busy life. Fast forward 3 months later. With Dad's memorial service over and the inheritance settled, I finally had a moment to breathe. Then, out of nowhere, John brought our parents-in-law to the house. "Richard, Catherine, what's going on? And you're here too, John." My parents-in-law smirked and sat on the sofa, looking at my flustered expression.
Listen up, Nancy. I'm giving this house to my parents.
"Excuse me?" I was so shocked by John's sudden announcement that I looked at him with a dumbfounded expression. Then John waved something in front of my face. "Hold on, where did you get that?" It was the key to my family home, attached to a key holder Dad gave me.
Borrowed it from your key case. No big deal, right?
As I tried to take the key back, John dodged me with the same smug smile. Angry and frustrated, I shouted, "Are you kidding me? Give it back!"
"Oh, you're defying your husband."
"This can't be allowed. Plus..." My words were interrupted by Richard, who sat arrogantly.
"Nancy, you're being persistent. As a daughter-in-law, it's your duty to give the property to your husband and his parents."
Catherine also chimed in with a nasty smile. "Exactly. Just give it up." Overwhelmed by their audacity, I looked down, and John spoke with a triumphant tone.
"We're moving next week. If you have complaints, leave."
They were claiming my family home, filled with memories of my late dad. This was beyond disrespectful. Fury trembled within me. I trembled with anger and gritted my teeth. I'll teach them a lesson. Ignoring my glaring, John and parents-in-law joyfully discussed renovations and room assignments.
"Mom, can you come over here?"
It was Brian who tapped my trembling shoulder. "Brian, not now."
"I have something important. Come with me."
He tugged at my arm and took me to his room. The story he told was enough to stir my resolve. That night, taking advantage of John's drunken sleep, Brian and I packed our stuff and left the house. 5 days later, on the day my parents-in-law had planned to move, I stood at the front door of my family home. John's car pulled up, followed by a large moving truck. John and my parents-in-law got out, smirking as they approached.
Oh, Nancy, you're here. Resisting now is futile.
John dangled the keys in front of my face, grinning unpleasantly. Richard crossed his arms and looked on.
Regretting giving up this mansion? Too late. It's our home now.
Catherine gazed dreamily at my family home. I can't wait to move in. Let's get inside. I stood there silently, watching them.
All right, let's go in, shall we?
John eagerly inserts his keys into the front door lock, but the door doesn't budge.
Huh, that's weird.
John jabs the keys into the lock multiple times. Then a man's voice comes from the doorbell speaker.
Who is it? What's going on here? Who are you?
John yells, clearly agitated. The front door opens from the inside, revealing a tall, middle-aged man.
I own this house. What's all the commotion?
John turns to me.
Nancy, what is the meaning of this?
This isn't your house. You know, it actually belongs to William now.
What?
With a shocked expression on his face, I explained to John. Originally, this house belonged to my grandfather. When he passed away, his sons, my dad and uncle, both inherited the house. My uncle, who was out of town for work, asked my dad to look after the house. So my dad did just that, while raising me, meaning now that my dad is gone, the house solely belongs to my uncle. I never had any rights to inherit it from the get-go.
So the house is now in my name. I changed the locks after hearing from Nancy that the keys were stolen. Stolen? That's a nasty way to put it. I lent the keys to Nancy. Taking them without permission is considered theft, even between a married couple. Breaking into someone else's house just adds to the crime.
My uncle calmly lays out the gravity of the situation to a fumbling John. John and my parents-in-law stand there, looking stunned.
Nancy, you knew.
Of course I did. I've always been close with my uncle, and my dad told me many times before.
Why didn't you say so earlier?
Richard yells, and I reply with a cool expression. Who was it that jumped to conclusions about renovating the place before I could explain? That would be you guys. John and my parents-in-law started to blush and tremble.
Then give us the inheritance you got from your father. It must be several hundreds of millions of dollars.
John becomes confrontational, and my parents-in-law are also in line with this. Exactly. Use that money to buy us a new house. That's the least you could do as a daughter-in-law.
That's right. Until then, let us live in your apartment.
Both John and his parents are making a racket. Ignoring them, I say with a sarcastic smile. I decline. I'm divorcing John. John's face turns even redder with outrage.
You're running away with the money, aren't you? You're not getting away with it.
A calm voice interjects.
Enough, Dad.
Everyone turns to look at Brian, who has emerged from the back of the house.
What? Brian? You were here?
John's tone suddenly changes, filled with surprise.
Dad, just divorce Mom quietly. You're cheating on her, aren't you?
As he looked down at his father, Brian speaks quietly. John's face turns pale.
So I saw you and some strange woman, arm in arm, leaving the hotel the other day. I even took a picture. You've got to be kidding. You saw me?
Brian holds up his mobile phone, and John looks at him panicked. My parents-in-law gaze at John, disbelief in his eyes.
You were following us, and you heard me telling her about her soon-to-be mansion and leaving my current wife?
Well, you're ready to throw away our family for some fling and take the stuff Mom inherited from Grandpa?
We don't need a dad like you.
Brian's words hit me right in the heart. But John snaps back at him.
Hey, Brian, have you forgotten who raised you? Both you and Nancy are so disrespectful.
My parents-in-law quickly agree.
Exactly. What's the big deal about a little affair?
The real problem is Nancy's lack of appeal. That's part of being a wife. Turning a blind eye. William interrupts the three with a stern voice.
Enough. We've got enough evidence. There's no escaping this. What are you even talking about? You're irrelevant. Stay out of it.
John glares at William, visibly shaken. Then, I drop the bomb. He's not irrelevant. I've handed the matter over to William.
What? Hand it over.
He's a divorce lawyer. We're going to take you for everything you've got, so brace yourself. John and my parents-in-law's faces turn pale. I continue pressing my advantage. Moreover, the apartment is in my name. I've been paying the mortgage. You're going to have to leave, like it or not.
You can't be serious. Where are we supposed to live?
John blurted out, followed by my parents-in-law.
So we sold our house, and we didn't get much for it.
Abandoning us? Are you, you heartless wife? I shot them a cold stare. You did this to yourselves. Figure it out now. Brian, William, let's go inside. As I said this, my parents-in-law started to turn on John, and the three of them began an ugly argument. If you don't leave right now, I'll call the cops. Finally, I headed inside, and after a moment, all became quiet. The sound of the moving truck faded into the distance.
Mom, that was rough.
Catching our breath in the spacious living room, Brian and William tried to console me, but all I could do was give a wry smile. Fast forward 3 months. John and I finalized our divorce. Thanks to William's hard work, we secured a hefty settlement in the divorce court from both John and his affair partner. When the divorce was finalized, I couldn't help but show a sigh of relief. William turned to me and said,
You did good.
Turns out John was in a financial mess after the divorce settlement, and even his affair went sour. John and his parents, now homeless, hurriedly rented a cramped apartment. According to neighbors, they can't stop fighting every night. They brought this upon themselves. Hopefully, they'll learn from their greed. It may be impossible for those people. As for me, although I didn't inherit the house, my dad left enough for Brian and me to live comfortably, and I have a job. Life is actually good. William and Brian have become fast friends, and Brian, who is studying law, is eager to become a lawyer like William. Looking forward, I'm excited to see Brian grow and to live a fulfilling second act of my life.
Divorce me. I can't see you as a woman anymore.
One day, my husband blurted this out as if he had had enough. I shot back, "Fine, here's the divorce papers." Perfect timing. I was already thinking about divorce. There is no way I can spend the rest of my life with this man. I'll make him regret wasting my life. I'm Chloe, a 35-year-old housewife. I live with my husband Marty. Our cozy home was a wedding gift from my parents. I was so grateful they built it for us. I vowed to repay their kindness for the rest of my life. I want to show them their grandchild's face and be a dutiful daughter. But married life didn't turn out as smooth as I thought. We had a beautiful daughter. We named her Felicia, hoping she would bring smiles to everyone's faces. From the time she was a baby, she was so adorable that my cheeks would loosen every time I held her. Even though I lost sleep due to childcare, I never resented Felicia. My husband, however, didn't feel the same. "Hey, Marty, can you hold Felicia for a bit?"
What? No, I'm going to work on my bike. Don't interrupt my hobby time.
He never helped with childcare. Apparently, Marty got into biking after we got married and often left home for days on biking trips. Think about Felicia, you are her father. No matter how much I pleaded, he would just say,
I'll think about it.
or,
I'm busy right now.
and that's not the worst of it. Marty doesn't make much money. We are far from financially comfortable, yet he spends on bike gears and luxuries. If he keeps us up, we'll be in trouble when Felicia needs tuition. I've told him to be mindful of his spendings, but he just says,
It's my money, or what's wrong with spending it on my hobby?
he clearly doesn't think about our future and probably has no intention of saving. It's not just me who will suffer if we run out of money. It should be a concern for Marty too. But no matter how much I plead, he doesn't listen. I thought I had to start earning money. But when I said, I'll work, so please help with the chores, he replied,
Housework is a wife's job.
there's only so much time in a day. I can't do everything myself. Yet Marty never once offered to help. He would come home and lounge on the sofa or tinker with his bike as if it's my job to do all the housework. He's never even said thank you for juggling housework and childcare. I deeply regret marrying such a terrible man. Today, Marty left the house again saying he's going on a bike tour. I thought, good riddance, and went to take out the trash. Wait, what? I glanced at the parking lot and saw Marty's bike. He said he was going on a tour, so why is he gone for days? Is he cheating? Staying at his mistress' place for days? I acted quickly and hired a private investigator. As expected, he was cheating. Honestly, I had no love left for him, but I was trying my best for the sake of our family. He does whatever he wants, neglecting his family, but still having the audacity to cheat? There is no way I could love him anymore. I want to be free from this life. I want to live just for my adorable daughter. I had reached my breaking point. One evening after dinner, Marty, who was relaxing, suddenly looked serious and said,
Divorce me. I can't see you as a woman anymore.
Finally, he said it. The words I had been waiting for. I wanted a divorce. He doesn't help with housework or childcare, earns a low salary, and has no clue how to manage money. I can't possibly share my life with such a man. Now, I'll be free from him. But I won't let it end with just a divorce. After all, he's treated me terribly. I'll make him regret using me like a maid. Fine, here's the divorce papers. I had already filled out the sections I needed to, because I wanted to get away from him as soon as possible. Marty looked surprised and said, Huh? Maybe he thought I would beg and cry? I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. He seemed suspicious of my readiness and asked,
Are you sure?
But I smiled and said, yes. I hurried him to fill out his part. Once I confirmed there were no errors, I felt relieved. By the way, there's something else I need to tell you. Even Marty looked uneasy. You are really a worthless man. You never help with housework or childcare, and you spend all your time on your bike hobby. You earn so little. Did you notice that just maintaining your bike was draining our finances? When I said I would work and asked you to help with housework and childcare, you said it's a wife's job. You never even thanked me for all the delicious meals I cooked for you. Marrying you was a total loss. I calmly listed all the wrongs he had done. Until now, I had accepted whatever he said. But if we are divorcing, there is no need to hold back. I let out all the pent-up frustration and blamed him for everything. Marty couldn't take it anymore and slammed the table as he stood up.
You're the one to talk. I bring home the money. I provide for you people who just stay at home, and you're saying I can't spend it on my hobbies? You are the selfish one. Managing the household finances is a wife's job. You can't even do that. You're the worthless one. Women should just shut up and support their men.
What a terrible thing to say. What was I thinking sharing my life with such a man? I really had no judgment when it came to men. The only benefit of marrying him was having Felicia. There was no need to work so hard every day doing housework and childcare, being harshly criticized and even verbally abused. I should have acted sooner. But from now on, this man will struggle to even live. I am fully prepared for my final move. I placed a certain photo on the table.
What the hell is this?
Of course, Marty recognized what was in the photo. It was evidence of his affair provided by the private investigator. Pictures of him kissing a flashy woman entering a neon-lit street and going into an apartment that wasn't ours. I knew about your affair too. The woman you're seeing is young and beautiful, though it seems she's quite the player. At my words, my husband's eyes widen.
What do you mean?
Did you know? She's seeing other men too. You're just one of the guys she's playing. He mutters,
That's a lie. You're making it up.
clearly shaken by my words. But that's irrelevant to me. You know, you could be sued for alimony because of your infidelity, right? At the mention of alimony, he looks up.
What? I should be the one asking for alimony after all you have said. If you're going to claim it, so will I.
I can't help but laugh at his absurd reasoning. He's going to claim alimony when he's clearly the guilty party? When he's the one who cheated? His stupidity is beyond saving. Go ahead and claim it if you want. I don't know if you will win, though.
Yeah, I will. You'll regret divorcing me.
The one who will regret is you, I think, but I swallow those words. All right, let's divorce then. I had already packed some of my things ready for this moment. As I head for the door, I remember something. Oh, you should leave this house soon.
What? Why?
This house was bought by my parents. You have no ownership rights. If I'm not living here, they'll probably sell it. You have no right to stay. So pack up soon. He hadn't anticipated this about the house and shouts,
Wait, hey!
as I leave with our adorable daughter. Seeing her cute smile, I know I'll be living in an environment where I can properly protect her from now on. I refuse to live a life being used by a man like that. I'll live the way I want to. I'll live for my daughter, and I won't let anyone interfere with that. Later, as I had said, I did claim alimony from him. We communicated through lawyers, and it seemed he had hired a cheap one with the little money he had. But his arguments were so poor that it was clear he had hired a subpar lawyer. My goodness, I was really surprised. I never expected such a stupid demand. My lawyer later told me. Of course, he had no right to claim alimony from me, but he probably didn't understand that due to his lack of education. Now, he's struggling to pay the large sum of alimony I claimed. Moreover, I later sent evidence of his affair to his company. I was furious that he could treat me so horribly and still work there as if nothing happened. Word spread quickly in his small, low-paying company. He couldn't quit because he needed to pay the alimony, and now he's isolated at work. A friend who works at the same company told me. He is so self-conscious that he eats his lunch in the bathroom, which made me laugh. He had always been boastful, spreading all sorts of stories and acting important. So it's no surprise that his superficial friendships fell apart when word got out about his affair. By the way, his affair partner turned out to be the daughter of the company president, and as I had found out from the investigator, she was quite the player. The president, fond of his daughter, cut my husband loose. Now, he's been abandoned by his friends and his affair partner, and he is being ostracized at work. I feel sorry for him, but he needs to work hard to pay back the alimony. As for the house, my parents decided to sell it after they found out I had divorced and moved out. It was a decent house, so it sold for a good price, leaving him without a place to live. He seems to be living with his parents now, who are quite strict, so he's probably being put to work. He certainly won't have time for his bike hobby, let alone go on a multi-day tour. Losing his friends, his affair partner, and even his hobbies, there is a part of me that finds it a bit pitiful but also amusing. He probably can't relax at home anymore. He always said
Housework is the wife's job.
so. I hope his parents pile it on him and he learns how hard it really is. And so, my long saga of revenge came to a close. While my ex-husband struggles with his life, our adorable daughter is growing up healthy and strong. Mama, Mama! Her wobbly steps, as she calls out to me and walks towards me, are irreplaceably precious, and now our family is growing.
Chloe, Felicia.
After the divorce, I got a job with the help of my parents to support us. That's where I met Roger, and we fell in love. He's a sincere and kind man who said,
You must have worked hard.
and held my hand even after knowing I was divorced. I feel like I can walk into the future with him. I had sworn off marriage, but maybe with him it will be different. He doesn't mind that I've been married before or that I have a child. He even dotes on little Felicia and visits her at my parents' house every weekend. Felicia has warmed up to him and calls him Daddy. The first time she did, he was so moved that he cried, and I knew he would love Felicia too. Now, I stand on the threshold of a new chapter in my life. Mama, you're pretty. My daughter hugs me tightly as I stand in my pure white dress. When I lift her, she happily kisses me on the cheek. This is my second walk down the aisle. The first time I was so nervous, I could barely see in front of me and focused only on making it to the end. But now, I can look forward with clarity. At the altar stands the man I love. I take a firm step forward, ready to embrace my new happiness. From now on, the three of us will weave our happiness together.
I'm Linda, 30 years old. Not too long ago, I worked as a pharmacy clerk, but now I'm on maternity leave, raising my 3-month-old daughter. My husband, John, works in the medical field. We met through a colleague of his, dated for 3 years, got married, and then our daughter was born. Originally, we planned to rent a small apartment and live happily as a family of 3. However, my mother-in-law kept insisting that we live with her. My father-in-law passed away from an illness a few years ago, and now she lives alone in their house. My husband has an older brother, 3 years his senior. Originally, the plan was for his brother to take over the family business. However, they've always had a rocky relationship with their mother. His brother loved drawing and wanted to work in the animation industry. Despite their mother's objections, he moved to Boston to pursue his dream. Well, my mother-in-law has always been a bit of a meddler. She's the type who needs to know everything that's going on. When my brother-in-law would finish his part-time job a bit late, she'd call his workplace just to check if he was still there. No matter how many times we asked her to stop, she'd cry and say, "I'm just worried about you. Why would you say that to me?" Eventually, brother-in-law got so fed up that he moved out right after high school. I can't blame him. I would have done the same. It wasn't just brother-in-law. My husband also had his fair share of issues with mother-in-law's behavior. They had a lot of conflicts over the years. To this day, mother-in-law can't seem to understand. She'd say, "He's such a disappointment. How could he betray his parents' expectations?" Every time we met, she'd bring it up, and it was getting old. With brother-in-law gone, mother-in-law kept saying she was lonely and wanted us to live with her. While moving in together was a big ask, I felt bad seeing her cry. My husband's family home was in the countryside with a lot of land. They had built a house there, thinking brother-in-law would eventually live in it, so we decided to move there. Since we'd be neighbors, we'd set some ground rules.
We might be family, but don't interfere with our lives.
Don't come into our house without asking. Stick to the rules, okay?
Knowing mother-in-law, she'd probably want to be involved in our lives. I could already see the eagerness in her eyes. But we couldn't let her disrupt our happiness. Thankfully, my husband was firm with her, and she reluctantly agreed, saying, "All right, I understand." Maybe she realized it wouldn't be in her best interest for us to leave, so she listened to my husband. For a while, she really did keep her distance. She'd call before visiting to see our daughter, and things seemed to be going well. I started to think that maybe this could work. But I didn't realize that this was just the calm before the storm. Our daughter had severe colic and cried loudly every night. We tried feeding her, changing her diaper, and everything else, but nothing worked. "It's okay. What's the matter, Jennifer?" Holding my crying daughter. I gently pat her back. I remembered a friend telling me that when her baby had severe colic, she'd take her for a drive. I tried it, and while my daughter would fall asleep in the car, she'd wake up as soon as we got home. It wasn't really helping. As if that wasn't stressful enough, there's been another issue lately. Mother-in-law has started making surprise visits in the middle of the night, especially when my husband is working late. On this particular night, my husband was on a late shift. Despite it being past 1 a.m. and my daughter crying loudly, mother-in-law showed up again. "Do you even know what time it is? It's so disruptive to have her crying this loud. Make her stop."
She was yelling at my 3-month-old daughter to be quiet. "Hey, what are you doing? Please be quiet. You're scaring Jennifer, and she won't stop crying." I was sleep-deprived and frustrated, so I snapped back at mother-in-law. We had agreed she wouldn't interfere when we moved in, but lately she's been coming over more and more, especially when my husband isn't around. If this continues, I'll talk to my husband and we might just leave. Being a new mom was already challenging, and mother-in-law's behavior was making it even harder. The next day, I considered telling my husband about the incident, but he came home looking exceptionally tired, so I held back. Time flew by with the demands of childcare, and before I knew it, my husband was working another night shift. That night, my daughter's crying was particularly intense. In my desperation to soothe her, I didn't notice mother-in-law entering our house. I sensed the bedroom door opening and turned to see mother-in-law walking in uninvited. "Whoa!" I was so startled to see her that I let out a surprised shout. Suddenly, I noticed a bat in mother-in-law's hand.
"Your child's crying is too loud. Make her stop,"
she yelled, raising the bat. "Watch out!" In an instant, I shielded my daughter from the impending threat. A sharp pain hit my head and everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was in a hospital bed. My husband was beside me. Holding my throbbing head, I anxiously asked, "Where's Jennifer? Is she okay?" Clinging to my husband, I sought reassurance about our daughter.
"Calm down, Linda. Jennifer's fine. A pediatrician is checking on her right now."
Hearing that she was safe, tears streamed down my face. But my relief was short-lived when I heard the next piece of information. Apparently, mother-in-law had called the ambulance, and her story was outrageous. She claimed she heard a loud noise in the middle of the night, and upon checking our house, she found me lying in a pool of blood. She suggested we might have been attacked by a burglar. Moreover, she had taken photos of the scene and sent them to my husband, who was at work, via WhatsApp. The audacity of her actions sent chills down my spine. What is she talking about? She is the one who hit me, right? Why is she fabricating this burglar story? I can't forgive her. At that moment, I revealed everything about mother-in-law's behavior to my husband. I should have told him sooner.
What if something had happened to our daughter? The mere thought drained the color from my face. After hearing everything, my husband was shaking with rage. Despite our agreement to keep boundaries, not only did she break her promise, but she also entered our home uninvited in the middle of the night and tried to assault me because of our daughter's crying. My husband immediately went home to check our security camera footage. I had previously told him about mother-in-law's verbal abuse. Since there was no evidence, and he didn't want to take sides, we had installed a surveillance camera to gather proof. I was planning to check the camera footage and warn my mother-in-law after confirming that she was using abusive language. We never imagined it would capture something like this. The footage clearly showed mother-in-law, bat in hand, attacking me. The camera caught her ignoring my crying daughter, ransacking the room to make it look like a burglary, and even casually taking photos as evidence. Afterwards, it recorded her shaky voice calling the ambulance. Her acting was so convincing that even my husband was taken aback. Of course, we couldn't let this slide just because she's family. My husband handed the footage over to the police. After reviewing it, officers went to mother-in-law's place and took her to the station for questioning. She clearly hadn't expected a camera in the room. Upon realizing this, she exploded in anger, accusing me of deception. "You tricked me! I can't forgive that woman!" she ranted, but I hadn't tricked her. She entered our home, assaulted me, and left our crying daughter alone. Everything was her doing. I hadn't deceived anyone. Still, mother-in-law remained unrepentant, causing a scene at the police station and insisting on her innocence. With the evidence against her, her claims of innocence were futile. We filed a report, and mother-in-law ended up with a criminal record. The incident even made the local news, making her the talk of the town. We realized we couldn't raise our daughter in peace here. With that in mind, we decided to move. So, we decided to move to a high-security apartment. Previously, my workplace was a 15-minute train ride away, but now it's 30 minutes. The commute is longer, but everything we need is within walking distance, and the convenience is worth it. We can raise our daughter here in peace. When we moved, we didn't tell our neighbors where we were going. We feared someone might inadvertently tell mother-in-law, who would then show up at our new place. That would ruin the peace and security we sought, so we kept our move a secret. Naturally, when mother-in-law returned to our old place, she found it empty. We later heard from brother-in-law that mother-in-law had been incessantly calling him, demanding to know our whereabouts, but brother-in-law, knowing her nature all too well, kept our secret. According to brother-in-law, when mother-in-law returned home, she predictably went around the neighborhood asking about our whereabouts. But given the recent incident, the neighbors, fearing for their own safety, didn't engage with her. They didn't want to get involved with someone so unstable. The community here is tight-knit, and no one felt safe with her around. Rumors spread about her erratic behavior. Perhaps hearing these whispers, mother-in-law couldn't bear it any longer. She sold her house and moved away. With the money, she frequented bars almost every night, drinking heavily. Eventually, she became infatuated with a young male staff member and began spending lavishly on him. Apparently because he designated that person and generously opened several bottles, each bill became expensive. Her bills skyrocketed, and before she knew it, she was millions in debt. Yet she believed everything would work out and continued her reckless behavior. But then, disaster struck. Due to her excessive drinking, she collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. The doctors said she needed immediate surgery. After the procedure, she had to stay in the hospital for a while. While in the hospital, she kept calling us saying, "I feel so alone here. I want you to visit me after I'm discharged. I want you to live with me and take care of me." Has she forgotten what she did to me back then? She's been so selfish in her demands. I mean, who would want to care for a mother who hit her daughter-in-law and put her granddaughter in danger? Besides, I've heard that my brother-in-law has a fiancé, and he doesn't want to introduce her to such a dangerous person. After all, we have a restraining order against her because of that incident. Even now I see her, I might collapse from the traumatic flashbacks. For these reasons, no one can take care of her anymore. But she says, it's been months since then, and I've reflected on my actions, so please take care of me now. I'm sorry, but I can't just move on from that incident. The scars from that time are still fresh. Just because she's remorseful, everything should be forgiven? That's not how it works. Every day, her persistent calls became too much, so I blocked her on WhatsApp and my phone. Given her current state, I doubted she'd hire a detective to find us, so I felt relieved after blocking her. But her persistence hasn't changed. After being discharged, she went to my husband's workplace, trying to find an opportunity to meet him. She was waiting near the staff entrance, and at first the employees thought she was there for a meeting or something. But when she kept showing up day after day, glaring intently, the security guard decided to approach her, and she left. Still, she came back another day, waiting for my husband at the same entrance. This time, the security guard immediately called the police, and 15 minutes later, they arrived and took her to the police station. Turns out, my husband was away for training that day, so she couldn't have met him even if she waited. When he found out, he apologized to his workplace. Thankfully, it ended without any major issues. A few days later, she called me from a payphone, blaming me. It's all Linda's fault. Because of Linda, this happened. I shouldn't have let him marry Linda. You need to take responsibility and care for me. Why is she blaming me for her actions? It's all her fault. It's wrong to put the blame on me. What are you talking about? Do you even understand the root cause? The past might be the past for you, but it's not for me. I still have scars, and sometimes I can't sleep because of the trauma. I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to see her. When I said that, she raised her voice. It's because Linda is weak-hearted. When you're married, sometimes you need to forgive. Linda caused all this fuss, and now my life is in ruins. Take responsibility. She was yelling over the phone, but I didn't respond. Previously, my lawyer advised me to record any interactions with her and to screenshot any WhatsApp messages or emails for evidence. So I always had a voice recorder in my bag ready to use. Of course, I reported everything to my lawyer. Perhaps she got a notice from the lawyer because she stopped calling me after that. My husband decided it was the last straw. He called her and warned that if she continued this behavior, we'd call the police again, and then he hung up. Immediately after, we changed our mobile phone numbers. My brother-in-law did the same, and finally, we felt free from her. However, in case of emergencies, we gave our number to my uncle, a former police officer. We trusted him not to accidentally share it with her. Plus, she's always been wary of him, so she wouldn't dare call him. After explaining everything to my uncle, he assured us he'd handle things if needed. Later on, she decided to find a job to pay off her debts. Due to her age, she couldn't find a high-paying job. She tried calling relatives to borrow money, but no one was willing to help. Desperate, she took on multiple part-time jobs to repay her debts. But she struggled with relationships at work and had difficulty learning tasks. She often got yelled at by her younger boss. On a brighter note, my daughter stopped having nightmares. Now she sleeps peacefully, making it hard to believe she ever had such troubles. Perhaps our old home wasn't a comfortable place for her. From now on, I hope for peaceful days with my husband and daughter.
My name is Olivia. I'm 45 years old. I married Matthew, who's 2 years younger than me, 15 years ago. We met at a social gathering. A friend mentioned that I had recently bought a house. It must have caught Matthew's attention because he pursued me ardently despite me being older. Initially, I was skeptical, but his warm smile and kind, intelligent demeanor won me over during our one-on-one date. I had never had a serious relationship before, and I quickly fell for him. To keep him interested, I tried my best to embody the ideal woman he was looking for. Fortunately, I never disliked housework. I was used to living alone, so playing the role of a homemaker wasn't too hard. A year into our relationship, he proposed and we got married. Upon his request, I switched from a full-time job to part-time. Little did I know that my efforts to captivate him would backfire in such a way. It all started one evening when I was late coming home from work. The weather turned bad suddenly, and I rushed home, regretting that I had left laundry out to dry. If this was the case, I shouldn't have hung the laundry outside to dry. I was relieved to find Matthew was already home, seemingly having gotten off work early. Apparently, it was unusually early today. It was good. Great. The rain just started. The laundry should be fine, I thought as I entered the house. I'm home. Welcome back. Wait, why does he sound so grumpy? I saw Matthew sitting on the sofa watching TV with a pile of crumpled laundry beside him. What's the deal with the laundry? Thanks for bringing it in. Don't hang laundry outside when the weather's like this. Aren't you ashamed to make your husband do chores? What? My gratitude vanished. My husband sighed loudly. Why do you think I wanted you to switch to part-time? So you can take care of the house. You're my wife. You should be doing that. What an outdated way of thinking. And it's pouring rain outside. But back then, I was head over heels for Matthew. Plus, I was the one who tried to play the role of the perfect homemaker. I swallowed my complaints and agreed. Confused, I looked at the lucky charm my friend gave me for moments like this. Slowly, my heart calmed down. Back then, that was enough for me not to resent Matthew. A year later, our adorable daughter Ava was born. Being close to my family was a godsend for support. Matthew adored Ava. But that was it. He never really helped much with housework or childcare. Yet, Ava was very attached to him because he spoiled her. Maybe being playful is enough? Fortunately, we could live off Matthew's salary. When Ava turned 3, I put her in daycare and started a part-time job. Then, I started using my own earnings to make my life a bit easier. Matthew never interfered with how I managed the house or raised our child. Whenever he complained about the house being messy or dinner being late, I reminded myself that he was just a big kid who happened to earn money to keep my sanity. Like that, we lived as a typical family of 3, more or less happily. Then, one Saturday, after Ava had gone to her extracurricular activities, Matthew's phone rang. From what I could hear, it seemed like it was his mother. He was scratching his head while listening intently. Once he hung up, I asked, "What happened?" "Well, can my mom and dad stay with us for a while?" "Sure." Matthew explained that his parents, Chloe and Brian, needed to move in temporarily because their apartment was being demolished.
They're getting old, and it's hard for them to find another place they feel safe in. Is that okay?
I get it. I really do. But having his parents live with us, although I felt uneasy, I agreed. What can you do? I could never say no in front of Matthew. A month later, Chloe and Brian arrived with a moving truck. They hauled in a ton of stuff and started exploring our house. Eventually, commenting,
It's a bit cramped.
"That's because of all your stuff." I held back my thoughts and offered a polite smile. I opened the door that connects to the living room. "This room, on the first floor is for you, Chloe and Brian. Please make yourself at home until you find a new place."
It looks like it gets chilly in here.
"We have a heater, so feel free to use it." Chloe started unpacking her things, obviously dissatisfied. Meanwhile, Brian opened the fridge without asking. "Hey, Brian!"
What? We're gonna be living here, right? What's wrong with opening my own fridge?
"Well, you're right, but you've barely been here before. A heads up would be nice."
I drink 3 beers a day. I'll let it slide this time, but keep it stocked from now on.
"All right." I knew this would happen. In more polite terms, my in-laws have an old-fashioned way of thinking. The elderly deserve respect, and men are naturally more important than women. When Ava was born, their first words were,
The next one should be a boy.
The tricky part is that they absolutely dote on their son Matthew, and Matthew, in turn, acts like a child around them. Fortunately, we live far from my in-laws, so until now, we've only had to endure them during summer vacations and Christmas. But it's getting harder to imagine this lasting much longer. I've tried to be optimistic, thinking it would only be a few months of hardship as we transition into a new living situation. However, that optimism was about to be shattered.
Olivia, I've been meaning to ask, is this all we're having for dinner?
Chloe said, wearing a displeased look on her face. Is there a problem with that?
Are you sure we're getting enough nutrients with so few dishes?
We might not have a very large variety, but I've loaded the soup with vegetable and there's also salad. It should be nutritionally balanced.
Grandma, Mom cooks dinner after coming home from work. I think this is enough.
To Ava's gentle interjection, Chloe responded curtly.
Children who know nothing shouldn't interrupt adult conversations. I'm saying this for your benefit and Matthew's, okay? Fair point. You do have weekends off, so you could at least prepare something in advance.
Matthew answered, and Chloe nodded in satisfaction. I'm so tired of running errands, like buying beer and adding more blankets because the room's cold. All because I have to cater to my in-laws' whims.
If you get it, then focus on your studies. Don't act all high and mighty until you get into college worth boasting about.
At Chloe's icy words, Ava hurriedly finishes her meal and quickly heads upstairs to her room. Seeing Ava's reaction, I can't help but sigh at Chloe, who's always complaining about bad manners. Does she really think someone can stay calm after being spoken to like that? Besides, there are people far worse than that.
Yeah, right there. Hit it! Hit it! Run!
Brian is munching on chicken and cheese, drinking beer, and loudly enjoying a baseball game in front of the TV. It's irritating to see Brian so excited, spitting while talking with one knee up on the couch. Ever since the in-laws came, Brian, being the eldest male, gets the most special treatment, followed by Matthew, Chloe, and then me, Ava. Sure, There's a time and place to respect the pecking order within a family. But what about Ava's feelings when her whole life gets upended because of the whims of live-in in-laws? These in-laws don't work, don't contribute to household expenses, and don't even look for a new place. When I asked them to contribute financially, they screamed at me hysterically.
We never asked our son for money. How dare you ask us for money?
It doesn't make any sense. They're still spending money at the spa and shopping without a second thought. Both Ava and I are nearing our limit. Over the weekend, I waited until the in-laws were asleep and snuck in a conversation with Matthew. Listen, ever since Brian and Chloe arrived, Ava's been locking herself in her room. Plus, we're spending more on groceries and utilities. This is our home. You should talk to Chloe and Brian about being more considerate.
Huh? Oh, they said they'll move out soon. Just bear with it for a little while.
Matthew responds absent-mindedly, eyes glued to his mobile phone. Lately, he's been addicted to mobile games. Whenever he's free, he's on his phone. He's been working late and even going to work on weekends. The other weekend, he suddenly had to go on a business trip and left in a hurry. Are you even listening?
I'm listening, I'm listening.
What could be so interesting? As I lean over to take a look, Matthew abruptly stands up, hiding the screen.
What are you doing? That's private.
Sure, mobile phones are private. But should he be so startled just because I might see his game? What are you hiding?
Nothing.
If it's nothing, then show me. I'm curious about what mobile game has you so hooked.
Well, it's just that,
Matthew fumbles with his phone behind his back. And just then, a message alert rings out from his usually quiet phone. It seems he had taken it off silent mode without realizing. It's Friday night, 11 p.m. Who messages someone at this hour? It's not like we're teenagers anymore. Something seemed off. You got a message. Want to check it? I smiled calmly. Matthew glanced at his phone screen and gave a fake smile.
It's a work thing. We should head to bed. I have to work tomorrow.
On his way to the bedroom, Matthew's phone slipped out of his hand. As he quickly picked it up and skimmed the screen, the message read, Megan, looking forward to tomorrow. Love you. Panicked, I snatched his phone and confronted him.
What's this about having fun at work with another woman? Who's Megan?
Love you? Have you been sending her the same thing? My gut feeling was right. Matthew looked around nervously before sitting down.
I'm sorry. It was just a harmless game.
To put it bluntly, Matthew was cheating. His excuse about being addicted to mobile games was a total lie. Turns out, the other woman was a junior colleague, and his excuses about weekend shifts and business trips were all lies too. The unexpected betrayal left me dizzy. Here I was, balancing work, house chores, and childcare, doing my best to support Matthew. Fed up with his dismissive attitude, something in me snapped.
You think it's okay because you're not serious. You're so annoying.
Just then, my in-laws woke up, rubbing their sleepy eyes.
What's going on?
Perfect timing. Let's share what their darling son has done.
Brian, Chloe, you need to hear this.
I explained everything I just found out to my in-laws. Matthew sat there, shrinking like a child who just got scolded. I didn't care if they thought it was childish to tattle to my in-laws. They all should feel a bit of shame. Matthew and his parents. I finished my rant and took a deep breath. That's when Brian mumbled, seemingly uninterested.
Is that all?
What?
You said it was a game, right? A fling or two is just men being men. If you're gonna be angry over that, you're going to have a hard time.
I can't take this anymore. That's right. Chloe would understand me, I thought. I looked away from ear-picking Brian to Chloe and was flabbergasted. Unbelievably, Chloe was rubbing Matthew's back and consoling him.
It's terrible that she snooped through your phone and yelled at you. She used to be such a domestic and adorable woman when she first came to greet us. Now look at her. Just an irritating wife. I'd understand if you wanted to have some fun. Mom, you get me? All I wanted was a little excitement.
Matthew lifts his face, nodding in agreement. Chloe, seemingly astounded, lets out a sigh.
Please don't throw a tantrum over this. If she's getting cheated on, it's because she lacks charm, you know.
I'm at a loss for words. I can't keep up with these people who, as if nothing happened, not only go on with life, but also defend their cheating son. I thought I could hold on at least until Ava becomes an adult, but I've reached my limit. Let's get a divorce. I pulled out the pre-filled divorce application that I got when I was younger. Matthew looked at his parents as if he were a helpless puppy. His parents snorted.
Matthew, we think it's fine to break up. You're talented and handsome. You'll have plenty of chances. Besides, the girl you're dating now is young, right? Expecting a son, perhaps? Women are just too chatty anyway.
Matthew, seeing how the situation unfolds, laughs as if he just realized something.
Exactly. She used to be so adorable, but now she treats me like I'm invisible. Starting a new family could be a way to reset things.
You've got to be kidding me. It was Matthew who first started neglecting Ava. Matthew started finding it tedious to engage with Ava as she matured and lost some of her cuteness. It's absurd to think a father who only engages whimsically would be liked. Whatever affection I had left for Matthew dissipates rapidly. So you admitted to cheating. For the divorce, expect not just property division, but also a minimum of a few $1,000s in compensation. The moment I say this, Matthew's hand stops writing. Chloe grabs his hand.
Why should our son pay that much when you're the cause of the affair? In our time, that wasn't a thing. If you have to pay that, don't agree to the divorce.
Even if it's a messed up logic, it's 3 against 1 from an outsider's perspective. Matthew snickers at his own situation.
That's right. If I don't sign here, we can't get divorced. If you want a divorce, you have to respect our opinions as well.
What is he saying? Is this some kind of threat? I can't do this anymore. Everything about these people is just too much. My anger is about to explode. Fine. Instead of property and compensation, I'll just take what I bought. You can record this as a promise. Matthew and his parents visibly relax. Before I change my mind, Chloe prompts us to open the voice memo apps on our phones. I record exactly what I just said, and Matthew quickly agrees.
Here's to new beginning.
Matthew eagerly starts filling out the divorce application. Late that night, after the 3 of them went to bed, I sent Ava a message about our future plans. I sighed with relief when Ava's okay came back. Don't have any regrets now. Be prepared. Then, I hurriedly looked for a new place to live. The divorce papers are already filed. Of course, I won full custody of Ava. Today's the day Ava and I leave this house for good. I was busy making preparations for the move. My in-laws and Matthew have become more arrogant than ever. Day drinking, as usual.
We need to get out of here ASAP.
Ava has long lost patience with my in-laws and has already packed her stuff. I didn't have much to pack either. It figures. I'd hardly done any shopping for myself since getting married. It was almost time for the movers to arrive.
It's good we don't have much stuff. Makes the move cheaper,
Chloe said, poking at our packed boxes. Ava and I exchanged glances and couldn't help but laugh.
What are you talking about? We ordered the largest truck available. Huh?
Ignoring the stunned Chloe, I walked over to the fridge and forcefully yanked out the plug.
Hey, what are you doing?
This is mine. I bought it. I began to unload the fridge, piling up all the food and beverages. Of course, the freezer wasn't an exception. The floor got a little wet, but I couldn't care less. Chloe grabbed my arm. I'm busy. I shrugged her off and went on to unplug all the appliances, carrying out whatever I could. Microwave, electric kettle, toaster, multi-cooker, washing machine, dishwasher, robot vacuum. I smiled at the shocked Matthew. Most of my paycheck went into these appliances to lighten your load around the house. Didn't you notice? That's right. Most of the appliances here I purchased. But not just that.
Mom, I got it down.
Ava came down holding a ceiling light. Thanks. Please get the ones downstairs next. Ava grabbed a step stool and reached for the living room light. Matthew and Brian looked puzzled, probably because they'd been drinking. Oh well, let me explain. Also the air conditioners, lights, and large furniture around the house, I bought those, remember? Matthew seemed to snap back to reality.
Please stop. Just stop.
No way. I opened the closet, packed full of Chloe and Brian's clothes. I'm only taking what's mine. Without giving them a chance to respond, I grabbed their clothes and tossed them on the floor. High-end brands or not, I couldn't care less. I emptied the closet, bookshelf, and decorative shelf one by one. Oh right, my dresser. I pulled open the drawers to find makeup that probably belonged to Chloe. Such expensive stuff going to waste. I can't be bothered to take it out one by one. So be it. All right, here we go. Flipping over each drawer, just like that, they're empty. Phew, feels good. Chloe's face is pale as she scrambles to gather her makeup.
Mom, the movers are here.
Ava calls out to me loudly. Show them around. Tell them to start moving things. I hear Ava responding to the movers in an energetic voice. She's acting way more mature than the flustered adults in front of her.
Sorry for the mess. Just go ahead and start moving stuff.
The movers are clearly professionals. Our home empties at an incredible speed.
My.
What's left are a few pieces of furniture and a pile of abandoned food and entertainment items. Essentially, hardly anything essential to our daily life remains. Well then, see you later. After waving goodbye to the truck, Ava and I catch our breaths. I take an envelope from Ava and tell her to go to grandparents' house. Just then, a loud yell comes from behind. Startled, Ava shakes her shoulders. I urge her to go and then turn around. It's not just the alcohol. My in-laws and Matthew are red-faced and shaking with rage.
How could you do something so horrible?
I did exactly as I said I would. Now it's time for all of you to sort out your moving arrangements.
What?
All three shout in disbelief. Pathetic. Don't you remember? I own this property and this house. Matthew's face instantly turns pale.
You're not saying you sold this house too?
That's right. The house and land are already sold. Even though their fears were confirmed, far from celebrating, my in-laws looked defeated. Well, of course they do.
This can't be allowed.
Look, I bought this house. The loan payments? Also me. You had zero involvement. What makes you think you have any say in the sale? In fact, whether they lived with me or not, I had the authority to proceed with selling. I haven't violated any rules. Most of all, this house is practically vacant now. I doubt they could afford to restore the home to its original state, given their endless spending.
Don't worry. You have a lovely girlfriend, right? Why not go to live with her?
I can't help but laugh at Brian's desperate attempt. Feel free to try, but I wouldn't count on her.
What?
Shocked, eh? I wonder if that's what his expression means.
What do you mean?
After you left, I contacted Megan from your office. A horrible woman. Perfect for you. After I told her about your true nature and about Chloe and Brian, she said she never wants to see you again. At my words, the color drains from Matthew's face.
No way.
Matthew tries to make a call on his mobile phone, but the voice that comes through is mechanical, even though it's from the same woman. The number you have dialed is either out of service or switched off. Frustrated, Matthew and his parents don't know what to do next. I approach them and hand over an envelope I got from Ava. Here, this is from Ava.
What? You've got to be kidding.
Of course it's a letter from Ava. Her dad and grandparents are in a bind, aren't they? Matthew's face lights up instantly. Nobody mentioned a letter, but okay. They open the envelope and unfold the paper inside. The look on Matthew and his parents' face turns to shock.
What is this?
It's paperwork for child support. Drafted by a lawyer. It's a legally binding document.
You don't have to worry about splitting assets or paying alimony.
You get it now? I never made a decision about child support. Basically, it's the child's right to receive it. Matthew is speechless. You're Ava's dad. She said she's determined to go to a university she can brag about. You're paying for her tuition until she graduates. Matthew and his parents are utterly defeated. It's a little kindness I can offer. I put a pamphlet from a moving company in front of them and walk away. Fast forward a month. The money from the sale of the property was safely transferred to my bank account. I'm now living peacefully in my new place when messages begging for reconciliation start coming from Matthew. According to him, the affair got exposed at work because of the call I made. His mistress had to resign. Matthew was demoted and lost the reputation he had built up. Now he's living in a rundown company apartment in the middle of nowhere with his family. The home is full of discord, with Matthew and Brian who never lift a finger, and Chloe who always did as she pleased. Their place is filled with clutter and garbage, making living there nearly impossible. What goes around comes around, huh? I block him on all platforms, ensuring he can't reach me again. As for me, I'm back to full-time employment, and Ava is thriving. Our space is smaller but loaded with the latest appliances. With Ava's help, there's virtually no burden of housework. Ava is committed to both her studies and extracurricular activities. Even though I told her not to worry about what Chloe says, she insists on working hard for her future self. Matthew is seemingly living with his family. Maybe it's time for me to move back with my parents at the contract renewal. My parents adore Ava, their grandchild, and the feeling is mutual. Living together shouldn't be a problem. I also have the money from the settlement and property sale. Maybe I could renovate my parents' home to make it more comfortable for them and Ava. Opening my makeup drawer, I take out the new cosmetics Ava and I bought recently. I apply a calm-colored lipstick to my lips. Life lasts 100 years. My life is just starting. The me in the mirror looks happy. And yes, I'm going to keep being happy.